Hey guys, welcome back to Community Starcraft 2. I'm your host Magnet as usual, and today's lesson is going to be regarding standard ZvP openers. As is listed there, we're going to be talking about very super standard 3-hatch macro, which has been the norm for the longest time and will continue to be forever and ever. And we're also going to talk about a second build that you guys can run if you want to do a little bit different flavor, which is a 2-base Ling upgrade style, which actually lasts a really long time. So I'm not going to go too far into it, but I'm going to show you guys what the differences are in the openers. Yeah, so Zerg in this matchup basically is going to do as much as they can without dying. So this is the ultimate matchup where Zerg kind of makes as many drones as they can, and they will only stop when they're about to be attacked. Most of the time with these builds you can make as many drones as you want, and you only have to scout one thing, whether they've expanded. If they've expanded, you can usually satisfy, or rather saturate all of your bases and play a very greedy style. So yeah, that's kind of the underlying theme to this whole thing, is basically, this is all keeping in mind that you can drone almost as much as you want. So we'll go ahead and jump into the game here, and we will get started. As you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and add an AI. He's going to be a very easy Protoss. And we want to be very easy because we don't want to have him doing anything that will disrupt our build, since all we're doing is practicing openers here today. This is going to be a little bit shorter than usual because this is actually a really similar situation to the macro video, in the sense that you kind of just make drones until you don't have to anymore. But we will do it again, and we'll talk about this in the replays as far as different adjustments you're going to have to make based upon what's going on. So, we will get there in just a second. This is the first game of the day, so my computer may take a little while to load this. Unfortunately, it doesn't preload anything while you're sitting in the menu, so you will get there as soon as we can. Okay, like usual, go ahead and send out your first Overlord. You're going to send him to his natural. And again, always make sure you're spending your larva as soon as you have the money. So if you're not spending your larva as soon as the money needs to be spent, then it's going to slow your build down. There's nothing really stopping you from making any of these larvae into drones as soon as we need to. So we're going to be doing, again, 3-hatch macro first. We're going to go ahead and make an Overlord on 9, which is really standard as well. You can make it on 10 and make an extractor and cancel it in order to have 11 drones for a moment, but that's a little bit too advanced for right now. We'll just worry about getting everything out on time. And again, I know it's annoying to hear the queen say you don't have enough minerals, but you're going to hear that a lot when you play anyway, so you might as well start getting used to it. Once again, as soon as the Overlord's done, go ahead and drone up to 12. On the 3-hatch macro build, we're actually going to open up pool first. I don't want you guys to open up with anything too terribly risky right now. Hatch first can work, but it is prone to a lot of cannon rushes and stuff like that. So we will just open pool first. So in this case, we're going to have that 14th drone we have right now go ahead and build our pool. It's going to be a 14-hatch build, of course. I mean a 14 pool, 16-hatch build. So this drone is almost done. As soon as he gets there, we have the money, so you can just rally him that way. Go ahead and continue to make drones. You want this Overlord here to spot, especially in this matchup. We'll just put him right over where we're going to take our natural expand. And again, we had drones for we had money for just a second. We weren't spending it, so it's a little bit of a mistake by me. The only exception to this build is if you're getting like super cheesed, and we'll explain that in just a second. We're going to go ahead and rally this guy down here. He's going to be the one that's going to build our hatchery. You might have to deal with a hatchery block here. Just do your best as far as fighting the probe, but most of the time, in leagues where you're actually looking for these openers, I don't think you're going to have to worry about it too much. Our pool's about to finish. We're going to create an Overlord, and then with our next 2 larvae, we're going to go ahead and make Zerglings. Okay, we have these first 2 hatches. Our Overlord is arriving at his base. We see an expansion, so it's perfect. We don't even have to pretend that we're doing what we wanted to do this time. We're only going to make a pair of Zerglings this time. And go ahead and make your queen as soon as your Overlord finishes. This Overlord can go pretty much wherever. It doesn't matter too much. And we'll just go ahead and send these lings out just for the sake of it. Continue to make drones here. And in this particular build, you can go ahead and take a third base as soon as you feel comfortable if they've expanded. So we're going to go ahead and take it right now. Getting pretty close on supply, you're going to want to watch out for that. So I'd say about 23 is a good time to go ahead and make that extra supply. We should have a larva any second too. There it is. There's our queen. We'll go ahead and transfer her. We're being attacked by a zealot. We need to keep this ling alive the best we can. Our hatch is done. Go ahead and transfer some drones. Overlord should be done. There we go. Right on time. Now we do have a third hatchery already. And again, this is really standard. The beginning of ZvP is kind of monotonous a little bit in the sense that they're really not going to be doing very much.
We require more minerals.
Keep your queen a little forward so you can pick off any probes that might be coming. And the biggest part of ZvP at this stage in the game is making sure that you spend, or rather making sure that you inject. So we'll only run this for a little longer. I want to just run it to the point where we're almost saturated in drones and we make a roach warren. So that's about the point when we need to start changing our build up just a little bit. So about 6 minutes, you're going to want to take your gas. Just so you can start adding speed, start adding a little bit of tech. Make sure you don't get supply blocked throughout the stage of the game, because that's about as bad as it gets. And just stay up on your injects. It's not terribly important to stay immediately on top of it, but you do want to queen at each base, and we do want to transfer drones a little bit so that we can make sure that we are getting as equal mining as we can. We are waiting on a couple of overlords right now that I do have in production. Yeah, there they are. I was like, I swear I did it. Okay, so start mining gas. As soon as you start mining gas, go ahead and make a roach warren. Which is going to seem, it is a tad early in this build, but I want to make sure that we cover all of the different options that could be coming. And then we can start adding gas. And I think that's about where we're going to stop for this build. And I'll explain everything that's going on. This is also a good time to just send your overlord in. It's okay to lose that. Okay, perfect. So, let's go ahead and stop this. If you want to continue to follow this build a little bit, I'm just scouting in there to see what information I can get. You can go ahead and grab Zergling speed right now if you want to, and then the remainder that you can use in order to hold attacks off is going to be with speed, or rather with roaches, since we already have the warren down. So, we'll just go ahead and stop that build here, and I'll talk about the reasons why this works and what you can do about it. And again, this seems really passive and kind of boring, but that's the way that you play ZvP, unfortunately. Like, this is one of the matchups where neither race should be able to actually cheese each other very well. And again, we might have to deal with these stupid glitches down here, so I'm sorry if we have to wait for a little while in order to get into replay. So I don't want it bugging us during the replay when I'm trying to explain this. Hum. Alright, we'll go ahead and get it started. Since I think when the points it will be bugging us is when there's not really anything going on anyway. Okay, so what we saw there was just me making drones. Nothing terribly special. I'll explain everything that was going on. Oh, whoops, I have my other overlay on. Let me get that changed. I do cast some matches sometimes, and I don't want to confuse you guys with all that. And this is bad. Absolutely nothing is loading. Wow, guys, this patch seems to be going pretty well. There we go. Alright, let me get this overlay off, and we will go ahead and get this started. I'm sorry about that. Okay. And again, I usually do these without editing because I need to spend less time on these videos than normal, considering I don't have a ton of time to spend every day. So if I can just stream it in one go and then display that, then that'd be perfect. So, sorry about any inconvenience, but yeah, we'll go ahead and watch the game here. I'll put it on everyone. Now again, the opener is really standard. You're going to do this in pretty much every matchup. You're going to drone up to 9. You're going to make an overlord on 9, so you'll notice I'm not spending my resources right away. So go ahead and grab that overlord. There he is. And again, go ahead and rally this first overlord to the opponent's base. If it's on a 2-player map, you want to just send it straight to the natural of them, like I'm doing right here. And you want to send your overlord to your natural. Your overlord to your natural is always going to happen. This one might be a little different because if you spawn on a 4-player map, you might have to send an overlord in one place and then drone scout with another one. If you need to do that, I would drone scout on about 11 supply. So after your Overlord finishes, and when you put a couple more drones in queue, is when you're going to want to scout. So I guess that would actually be 12, but yeah, whatever. Anywhere around that time would be fine in order to figure out what's going on with him, because your third hatch is going to depend on what you see from him. And I'll explain that. We all have to make up a little bit of scouting information for the sake of this opener, and I'll explain all that in just a second. So we're just going to go based upon with what we know. So again, 14 pool is going to be the target. So with your 14th drone, you can just send him to rally down here. He should be ready to make the hatchery, or rather make the spawning pool as soon as he is done, and as soon as he walks down there, it should tick to 200 minerals like right then. So that's a good thing to do. Just take your 14th drone and set a rally on him. You can get that pretty much every time. And again, we're just droning up to 16. I'm going to send the 16th drone down to build my hatchery, which will put me at 15 supply. So we'll go ahead and watch that happen. Kablam. And that'll happen pretty much at the same time that you can see what's going on his wall. So this is the one little bit of scouting information that you probably want to change. If you don't see anything on this wall, you're going to want to probably throw down a gas right away, because if it's a gateway expand, you're going to be prone to a lot faster warp gate attacks. So if that's the case, you really want that gas, and you really want to get speed up and get a roach warren down as soon as possible, just in case they're going for some kind of 2-base really fast, even a Nexus cancel type of all-in, so that you can hold that off. And Zergling speed makes a huge difference against that, so that you can get behind any sentries or behind any stalkers and get a surround on his army. So yeah, that's the only adjustment I would make at this point. When your Overlord gets there, if they don't see a wall starting to form, take a gas and send your Overlord forward to see if he has a gateway or a forge. If he just went forge in main, which is pretty rare, but it still can happen, then you don't have to mine from your gas. You probably should still take it as soon as this Overlord doesn't see a wall anyway. The second point is that if he does not have a Nexus here by the time your Overlord gets there, or if he has a forge and a pylon, and a Nexus should be coming down at any point. I mean, there's no reason to wall this off if he's not going to expand, right? So if he has either a Nexus or a wall here, you should be pretty safe to go ahead and take your third base, assuming you see his Nexus coming down. So if there's no Nexus here and no wall, he could still be going for that 1-base attack or all-in. There's no reason to take this third base. So the information that I'm reacting to is I'm just pretending that there's a wall here and we already see a Nexus. So I'm just pretending that he opened with a forge or a wall and a Nexus here. So I don't take gas, and I just took a third base, since that's what you're going to do most of the time. And as far as the third base timing, if you have to take gas based upon if they went gateway first, you can do that about when speed, I say, is halfway done, so that by the time your hatchery finishes, that'd be about when you're expecting attacks anyway. That would be a little bit later than usual, maybe after an expansion or something like that. That you could go ahead and take that third base and more than likely hold it. Okay, so we have our queens out. Again, my first queen was at 16. I'm sorry I skipped this part. First queen was at 16. I injected with her, and then I transferred her to the natural. And then as soon as I did that, I started another queen on this hatchery. You want to get these two out pretty much as soon as possible, so that you have available larvae to spend on all these hatcheries here. And one thing that I neglected to mention is that once your money starts to pool after your third base is done, you can throw down a macro hatch, and you probably want a queen assigned to each one of those. But the point is that you want to get these queens out as soon as possible in order to spend your money the best you possibly can. At this stage in the game, it's only about making drones. So if you don't have enough money to make drones, then you're just doing nothing but shooting yourself in the foot. So again, we want to keep this Overlord somewhere nearby so we can scout and see what's going on. As far as our first pair of lings, they should have already been on the map. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm missing a lot here. That's a little bit sloppy. Let me go ahead and go back. Explain this. I think I had it running while I was explaining a point, so my fault. Okay, cool. So our first pair of lings just came out. And you can see we did that as soon as our pool was done. We just made an Overlord and we stashed a little bit of larvae in order to make those lings. You really only have to make these two if they make an expansion. And these two are just to spot attacks that they might have moving across the map. They can also scout stuff on their wall, like upgrades coming up. So these two lings are purely just to figure out what's going on. One thing you can do that I didn't do is you can separate these lings so that one stands about right here, and the second one can go around looking for hidden pylons or probes around the map. So that's another thing that you can do as well. But the whole point of these lings is just to sit here and alert you if you have an attack coming across the map. So once again, third hatchery roughly at about the time when you realize that there's no risk in taking it. So if they have an expansion or if they open forage and stuff like that, then you can go ahead and take a third hatchery. Okay, cool. So we're going to go ahead and resume. I'm sorry I skipped that part. The rest of these overlords, it doesn't really matter too much where you rally them. You probably just want to rally them to a safe point. You can go ahead and rally them here so that you can get 2 overlords scouting his base when you need to. We'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, we're just continuing to make drones here. Whoops, I'm sorry, wrong button. And always make sure you're staying on top of your supply and you get overlords out in time. I could have done a better job of this as well, and it is a little bit hard to remember everything going on at the same time. But just be sure that when you're droning that you don't get supply blocked, because that's really just the same thing as just not making drones for a second. Okay, we're just continuing to throw larvae on here. Okay, about the 6-minute mark is when you're going to want to grab your first gas. You can grab it earlier than that if you feel more comfortable with getting an earlier speed, but this is probably the minimum that you need to do. You're going to grab this gas in order to go ahead and get speed. You can do double gas if you want to, but the point is that you want to have these available, because if they open forage in a really passive build, they could still have an attack coming at you at about 7:30s, I'd say about the time. So yeah, you want to start ticking up about right now. You can see our drone count is at about 40. So we're going to continue to inject as soon as we can. Let's see, my queen selected. There we go. And about this time as well, you want to throw down a roach warren shortly afterward, after your gas has been started, so that you can actually get everything up that you need to in order to hold off attacks. There's the roach warren, and about this time is going to be when you're going to want to scout his main the best you can. So you can use this overlord, and one thing I really should have done is I should have rallied an overlord right here so that I could scout everything in his base. And it's okay to lose those couple overlords because you're going to have a little bit of extra resources by this stage of the game anyway. Well, what you really want to know is how many gases is he on, what tech does he have coming up, is it like a Stargate or is it a Robo or something like that, do I need to make spores so I need to protect against ETs? This is the time when you need to find out, about 6:40. Just send these overlords in, let them die, let them figure out what's going on, and then react from there. So at any point where I force you to start reacting to the game state is when I say the opener is pretty much over. So just to summarize, you really want these 3 hatcheries up as soon as possible, and you can take those 3 hatcheries if they did a forage opener, which would be like a forage on the wall right here, and a nexus. If they do have a gateway or something on the wall instead of a forge and a nexus, then you probably want to open with an earlier gas. Otherwise, you can take a third base pretty much uncontested. Later on in the game, you want to take a gas at about 6 minutes and follow that up with a roach warren shortly afterward, about 6:40 when that gas starts mining. You can take a second gas if you want to in order to get faster roaches up and faster speed. And once the roach warren is done, I would probably take those extra gases as well. Maybe up to 4. If you want to do a really greedy lair build, I probably would go up to 6. And by that I mean like mutas or really early swarm hosts, which is pretty risky, but you have to understand those carry risks anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much the point of the whole build. I hope this part makes sense. It's a little bit difficult to explain because Zerg is so reactionary. But the basic point is that get as many drones up and stuff as you possibly can while you can in the early game. So the next one we're going to be talking about is a more conservative style, and this is one that requires a lot less reactions. You can pretty much just do this without really caring what they're doing. The only thing that you would need to scout for is a 1 base all-in. So you don't need to worry about forge openers versus gateway openers. This will take care of both of them just fine. The only complaint that people might have is that it's a little more conservative, maybe needlessly so, but I feel like it's okay against somebody that plays really passively, against a Protoss that plays really passively, because your tech advantage is going to be the point of this build, your tech and upgrade advantage. So I'll explain this, and this build can go for a really long time, but I'll just go to a point where you need to start making like real in-game decisions before we get too far into it. So basically, this is going to be a build that stays on 2 hatches for quite a while, but it gets really fast Zergling upgrades so that you can push your upgrade lead really hard in the mid game. You should be on 3-3 when the Protoss is maybe on like +2 attack if you do it right. And you're going to be on 3-3 in terms of melee units because it's going to usually transfer into ultras. And that's actually surprisingly hard for Protoss to deal with. And you're always capable of making the reaction if you figure out that he's doing something different. And I did change the map. I'm just so used to clicking Akalon Waste, so I'm sorry. But we're going to send this Overlord out, just make sure that we can see a Nexus.
We require more minerals. We require more minerals. We require more.
Again, the Queen is going to annoy you a little bit with saying that she requires more minerals, and you're just going to say, okay, Queen, I get it. I'm making as many minerals as I can. Stop harassing my drones. Don't judge me, etc. 9 Overlord, once again, is going to be our goal. We're going to go ahead and make a 10th drone while that's going on. And of course, we can't make any more while we're at 10 out of 10, so we're just going to wait for our Overlord to finish before we get that done. And again, send him down to your natural, because you need to be able to spot against cannon rushes and stuff like that. There we go. And again, I'm not going to burden you guys with any hatch first builds, because those require quite a bit of knowledge and control of how to deal with cannon rushes, and I don't want to put you in that position. It's kind of unfair in this matchup because there's so many weird reactions that you need to make. So again, 14 pull, we're going to use this drone to make it. And there we go. Some people like to hatch first on this build. Once again, I'm not going to burden you with that too much. We're going to continue up to, we're going to take our gas on 15 here, because we do want an earlier gas for earlier speed. And we'll make a hatchery again on about 16 drones. And continue to spend your larva as soon as you possibly can. There we go. This drone will head down there to make our hatch when he's done. Actually, we can pull out a little bit earlier since we did make a gas, so we'll go ahead and send these guys back. Start mining gas off that as soon as you can. And we'll take our hatchery. We're on 16 supply once again, or I'm sorry, now we're on 15, so we're going to go ahead and make another drone. Our pool is now done, so you can put out a pair of Zerglings if you want, but our Overlord is more important at this point, so we're going to go ahead and make an Overlord on 16. With our next set of larvae, we're going to go ahead and make a Ling, or rather a pair of Lings. Again, you want to see if they've expanded yet. And you can go ahead and make a Queen as soon as you have the money, and as soon as your Overlord finishes, that'll unlock it for you. There you go. Now we want to get speed as soon as possible here. So there we go, lined up perfectly. Okay, we're just going to pretend that we see a Nexus here, but even if we don't, this build is going to be exactly the same. We're going to continue to mine gas after speed here, which is not something you typically do in like ZvZ. And I want to get these Lings out in order to stand out in front of their base so we know when we need to start making Lings instead of drones. Queen's almost done here. We need to use our next larva probably on an Overlord. It's getting to that point. There we go. Queen is going to go ahead and inject. And we're going to send her down to the natural just like before. Start another Queen. I'm pretty sure I have an Overlord. Okay, there we go. Yeah. And this time I'll send him over here just so we have information. Now, since these Lings are really expendable, I'm just going to poke up here to see if he has a Nexus or not. And again, he does not, so we'll just keep this out on the map. Okay, we're getting to the point where we need to add a second gas, and this is the same for pretty much any rendition of this build. Continue to inject like we were before. Just continue to make drones for a little while until you're forced to build Lings. And at this stage of the game, we're getting pretty high in gas. We probably need to take our upgrades now. Go ahead and take your extra gas. You want to continue to scout up here with your Lings. By this point, it's probably best to go ahead and add a Roach Warren, just for that little bit of safety, because our upgrades won't be done for just a little while. And just because they're a little bit more larva efficient in terms of strength. Not necessarily larva efficient, but they do give us a little bit more power, and I am missing Overlords quite a bit. Wow. That's okay. We're going to be spending our money a little bit on upgrades for just a bit anyway. So 36 about the time you're going to start 1-1.
We require more minerals.
And I'll go ahead and make a second overlord just so that I don't immediately spend it. Okay, cool. So we have a lot of gas here. And this is going to be the point where you probably want to make your lair, so go ahead and do that. About 7 minutes. It's a little bit early, but that's okay. This will just be so we can get some detection and stuff like that as well. And if we'll talk about all this scouting later in the replay anyway, so don't worry too much about it. We're just going to continue to make workers here. And again, just have these lings out here on hold position. As soon as they get attacked by a reasonable force, you can even separate them just a little bit like this, so that one will get killed, so you can maybe be alerted, and the second will get killed, so you can actually see the supply that's moving across the map. And I'm missing overlords once again, but doing my best here. Okay, once you're about filled up on both bases, is when you're going to want to think about taking your third base. We'll go ahead and stop it here, because this is the point in the game where you really want to start making decisions. But yeah, either way, I mean, we'll be able to talk about it here in just a second. Ideally, you want to go ahead and maybe grab overlord speed just so you don't lose too many, because this build is a little bit sensitive to losing supply. And again, we'll just continue to drone as long as we know there's nothing coming across the map. And we have our third base. Once 1-1 finishes, you want to get on top of 2-2 right away. And ideally, you'd have a little more queens to start creep spread here, so we'll go ahead and start those. We'll cancel overlord speed because it's not the most terribly important build or upgrade right now. We'll get it after our queens. Grab these gases as well. And again, as soon as those are done, you want to start your extra upgrades. We'll stop right here, I think. And we'll talk about this build in the replay. And you'll be able to see why this build works really well against Protoss. And we're getting weird scouting information from this very easy AI. So we're just going to make up some scouting information just for the sake of consistency of what you're going to see in your own games. Just waiting for this to come up. So the whole point of this build is that you need a lot less information as far as the hatchery build. So if you're getting confused by all the different changes you need to make with the 3 hatch build, you can run this one and it's pretty safe. So I always try to run one build that's super standard, and then I like to run a second build that's like, well, if you don't like that first build, then you can always use this opener. And this opener is something that was really popular on the pro level for a little while. It actually fell out of favor just a bit because the pro meta changes all the time, but even on the ladder up into GM, you'll still win a lot of games running this style. So I'm not going to use anything that's like too super sneaky and not viable, but I also don't want to use something that I can promise is going to stay viable at the pro level forever because the change is so fast. So yeah, we'll explain this in just a second. Okay, cool. So we're in the game. The openers are very easy to follow. Again, we're just going to go drone up to 9. Send the overlord down here to scout for a nexus at his natural expand. And we'll continue to go on here. So once again, the opener is going to be a 14 pool. I believe I took my gas on 15 and then a hatchery on 16, but let's double check that. The build order doesn't matter too much in the early parts of the game. It's just whenever you feel comfortable to take everything. So yeah, it was a 15 gas, 14 pool, and then I believe it's going to be a 16 hatch. Yep, okay, 16 supply. We're going to send this guy down for a hatch. Okay, cool. So we're mining gas. We want to get Zergling speed up really soon. That's the whole point of this build, is just to be really conservative with our Zerglings. And if you do everything that I've done up to this point, which is a 16 Overlord, a pair of Zerglings, you should be able to spend your gas like immediately. So you can see we're at 110 minerals and 100 gas. So I just did this build to time everything out as perfectly as possible. So there we go. Grab Zergling speed. And again, with this first pair of Zerglings, you can separate one to go ahead and scout around for pylons and stuff like that. And you can also, yeah, you probably should just separate one out. You can also make an extra pair of lings if you'd rather do that. Like, if you'd rather have the first two come up here and just wait for an attack or to scout the wall and stuff like that, then you can do that. And then you can make a second pair with one of these extra 2 larvae in order to have them run around the map and check for pylons and hidden tech and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different options you can do. Another thing I really need to make clear is that your second overlord absolutely has to go to your natural, because if you only have your hatchery building here, you're not going to be able to see like beyond this circle that I'm drawing right now. If you can see anywhere beyond here, it's only because you'll have another unit there, and they could be starting cannons over here. They could be starting a whole bunch of different things that could bother you. So you really want that overlord here just so you have the vision around your hatchery while it's building. So we'll keep going on here. Queen is out, and again we're going to make our queen on about 16 supply. This time she was supply blocked because I think we started her on 17 since we started the pair of links first. Not a too big of a deal though. As long as she gets the inject done and as long as she transfers down, that'll be perfect. The reason you transfer her is instead of building a queen here is because she actually gets out before this hatchery is done, so that you can inject and start walking her while she's really slow across this creep. The second reason is so that you can have a little bit of a forward unit in order to deny any probes that might be coming in here to try to scout your base. Coming from a Protoss perspective, if they see no third base and a queen at the natural here, a lot of them might think it's an all-in and they might overreact, when all you have to do is just sit there and be like, okay, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing here, no problem. So this does look a little weird to Protoss. It's another reason why this is a pretty good build. Okay, so we took our second gas. At about 33 supply, we're taking double Evo chamber. This would be when you want to start an overlord, but I did miss mine, and it turned out to not be a very big deal because I just spent my money on upgrades instead. So I wouldn't be spending them on drones at that time anyway, so not a big deal. And you will want to go ahead and grab a roach horn at about 6 minutes here. Now, as far as the scouting from him, you definitely absolutely want to keep these Zerglings right here so that you can see what's going on. You want to continue to poke in here to see if there's a nexus. By this time, there absolutely should be. If there's not, you're probably getting all in. So a transition I would make in this build is I would stay on this number of drones for a little while. I probably wouldn't get my upgrades, and I would probably add like 2 or 3 spines right here in order to hold a one base all in if he still has not expanded by about 6 minutes. So that's one thing you really need to watch out for, and that goes for the other build as well, which you should be doing if you saw no nexus or a gateway opener anyway. So by this time, about 6 minutes, roach horn should be coming down. You want to really start thinking about, okay, am I going to be all in on just one base here? Do I need to add spines? Do I need to run my overlord in to scout for a dark shrine so you can get your lair a little bit earlier if you're worried about something like that, which we do in just a second. But you probably want to spore if he still did not have an expansion here. Those are a little bit more advanced scouting reads. We'll talk about that in a few other videos, so don't worry about it too much right now. Okay, so lair's on the way, 1-1, and again, we're going to pretend that he's expanded by now, so that we can just run our build without really caring what he's doing. So 1-1 is on the way. The whole point to this is that these upgrades are really, really early. By now, the Protoss might have +1 attack done in about a minute, and that's it if their upgrades are super quick. So in a minute, roughly, maybe a little bit more than that, you're going to have 1-1. You're already going to be an upgrade ahead, and you can start 2-2 immediately as soon as that's done. If you keep up on this pace and start 2-2 and then put down an infestation pit and get your hive for 3-3, then your 3-3 and your ultras are going to be extremely fast, and you can start to be really aggressive. You can take the whole map because they won't have units to deal with that as far as if they attack you. So this is a really oddly paced build, but it's a really super strong build if you do that. And especially if you get all your drones on time, especially if you get all your upgrades on time, and if you scout well enough in order to not die to an all-in. So okay, by now, we can see that, let's pretend that he's taken a base. If you have your Zerglings out on the map, you'll know when he's moving across the map. And as soon as these Zerglings die and you can see his army, if it's more than like 1 or 2 Zealots or something, then you'll probably want to produce a whole bunch of Roaches or Zerglings in order to hold this off, depending on what resources you have available. But by now, if he hasn't attacked you and it doesn't look like he's going to, you can go ahead and take a third because our bases are starting to get saturated. So right now we're on about 20 drones mining on minerals here and 19 mining on minerals here. That's a good sign to say, okay, I can take my third base and I should be totally fine. So just have an overlord head down here to start spotting and get a hatchery queued up. So you can see I already have it ghosting, and it's going to be this drone that's going to make it. You probably want to pull one from your natural, but it's not that too big of a deal. Okay, I wish we had a real game in order to compare this to, so you could see how fast these upgrades are. But the upgrades and the information is going to be the reason why this build actually works. And right now I'm at 27 drones and 27 drones here, so by the time my third is ready to go and ready to start mining, I can transfer pretty hard off of this and almost totally saturate this base. So we'll be caught up in drones with the other build really fast too. So, I mean, this build grows up in a very different way than the previous one, but it's a way that a lot of people are really comfortable with playing, and it requires a little bit less scouting information in the beginning, and again, start 2-2 as soon as you possibly can. So cool. Yeah, that's pretty much outlines the opener in this build, and maybe in some other games it does cancel everything when you quit the game. That's why there's like pieces of stuff up in the air. But maybe in other games when we see this build ran and I talk about it a little more as far as like a heavy upgrade style into really fast hive, then we'll see this build some more. But this is the opener of the build, and I hope that it makes enough sense that you guys can run it yourselves. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I said at the beginning this wasn't going to be very long, but it turns out that I actually need a little bit more explaining than I thought. So we're at about 35 minutes right now. So I hope this answered your questions. If you have any additional questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments and I'll take care of them. If you don't have anything better to do, to go ahead and check out my gaming team site, which is akagamingteam.com, or my stream, which is twitch.tv/magnetse2. I haven't been streaming very much because my internet's been having a lot of problems, but I'll get that resolved as soon as possible. And of course, check out our sponsors that really help us out: SE2 Replay Stats, Allstate, and Propel Zero. So yeah, those guys definitely help out our team a lot in order to get these videos up for you guys. So yeah, stay tuned. We're going to be doing ZvZ openers next, which is a matchup that a lot of people have trouble with. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you later.